Good morning, everyone.
Break up there a little bit, don't you? We might just try again.
Good morning, everyone. How's that going?
You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Pity not to be in Townsville this morning when I consider that the air temperature in Townsville is double what it is here at the moment. So it'd be a much warmer place to be. So what I wanted to do today was just talk about drought resilience and how advisors can work with climates. And there's been some quite significant changes in the way the Department of Agriculture rolls out its drought assistance program. And I'll also talk about the Northern Australian Climate Program and how that can contribute to helping advisors work with clients. But we'll just have a look at the department's drought program. This will move on. So we've got probably a short history of Queensland, what's happened as far as drought assistance in Queensland. And if we go back to 1992, and we can even go back a bit further than that, that the transport subsidy scheme started in about 1965 and has continued up until about this year, until Shires came off the drought list. But essentially, if we go back to 1992, there were some major changes happened there, and the department looked at self-reliance as far as producers were concerned. Also looked at some extension programs. And one of the main things that probably the first time it had ever happened, I think, from any state government in Australia, is that there were dollars for climate science and some sort of prediction tools and improving the information that we had in looking at climate, where it might be going. And that, as we'll see a bit later on, has contributed to programs that, like the Northern Australian Climate Program. Ultimately, that program looked at moving away from freight subsidies and making sure that people were ultimately able to handle some of the variability in climate that we've got. So we come to 2000. There was a program there looking at scrapping freight subsidies. That didn't happen because of the political processes of the time. We move on to 2018, 2019, where Ruth Wade and Charles Burke, ex-AgForce, went around the state, talked to producers about how they plan for drought, what sort of financial assistance people were looking for, and ultimately looked at short-term things like the removal of freight subsidies to have a longer-term plan for people in drought. So essentially, Queensland drought reform has come to this place now, and it talks more about preparedness. So as you can see there from that slide, we're looking at more about drought preparedness. And one of the key things in this drought preparedness at the moment is this thing called a Farm Business Resilience Plan. And as advisors sitting in the room there, you would know that quite a few people have got some sort of farm plan, but there's still a huge proportion of properties that and farm businesses that don't have that plan. And as a key to people receiving the assistance, one of the things they need to is for complete one of these farm business resilience plans as a means to access some of this assistance. So the assistance that people could look at now is farm management grants, drought preparedness grants, and drought ready and recovery loans. And the key thing about this is that people can look at accessing this assistance. They don't have to be drought declared at that current time to be able to do that. And I think that's a key thing. So for advisors sitting down with people planning, well, what are we going to do in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? How do we prepare for those inevitable dry times that we do get? It's about sitting down and actually putting that on paper, seeing where we can access some of this funding to try and improve the situation that we're in. And that funding will cover things like improving water supply issues, and up until probably the last 18 months, people right across the state have had some pretty severe issues with water supply. So anything people have, any opportunity that they got at the moment to ensure that they're prepared for the next dry period that we do get is going to make quite a difference. So it's worth making yourself pretty aware of what is available there to help people plan for the future and what might be happening as far as changes in climate. So it's a pretty straightforward step-by-step guide. It's about sitting down, doing that farm business resilience program, having a look where those guidelines for that particular assistance might suit people. And as I said before, people are able to apply for that assistance at any time. Sometimes it's worth sitting down with people and just looking at the amount of variability that they do get. And as we know, anyone in agriculture is always the eternal optimist and hoping that things will be better or things will improve next time. But when we look at something like this, where with annual average rainfall, and I've just picked Townsville there, and Townsville's probably being on the coast is one of the more reliable rainfall areas. You can see there that the significant year-to-year variability that Townsville gets in their rainfall there. And that's essentially what people are up against every year, that variability, and how do we manage that particular change in year-to-year rainfall events. So we can also look at a shorter period of time, and this is from the Climate app that you can get this information, and I always have found this extremely valuable for people managing in dry times or wet times, to just do a comparison of where we're sitting at the current time. So we can see there that the rainfall from Townsville from July 21 up until July 22, they're 206 millimetres above average. So it's a pretty handy tool, particularly when it's dry. You can do a quick, simple comparison as to where you are at the moment. And these are some of the tools that are available to people now that they can use just to help with that, not only day-to-day decision making, but with any decision making that they've got in the longer term. One of the other major projects that's happening with the RDCs right across Australia at the moment, and MLA is one of the main contributors to this climate project called Forewarned is Forearmed. And if we look across Northern Australia, we find that that climate variability is the really big thing that affects people. And in some early surveys done about 4 years ago, people said to researchers, they said, well, as far as we're concerned, we want to know when the really dry periods are going to happen and the really wet periods are going to happen. So this particular project was born out of that, and it's produced up to 5 new climate projects, that products that are now available for producers across Northern Australia. And these products, they do take some interpretation, but once people become familiar with them, they're pretty easy to use on a regular basis to help people make decisions when it's based on climate. And we've come up with probably 10 different steps to help people get weather information. And if we look at the weather information space, it's pretty crowded at the moment. And often we see all sorts of information in the mainstream media about, and probably the current time is one where we see that there's prediction of wetter winter. But for a lot of Northern Australia, a wetter winter might mean the difference between 1 mil of rainfall or 10 mils of rainfall over that particular dry period. So a lot of this information can be a bit overwhelming for people. And this is where the Northern Australian Climate Program comes in to help people interpret this information and make the best use of the information. With our climate workshops that we've run across Northern Australia, we've found that probably about 8 out of 10 people are misinterpreting the forecasts that we're getting at the moment. Most of these forecasts are probability based, and people really need to be able to understand and use probabilities. So, Northern Australian Climate Program funded between MLA, Queensland Government, University of Southern Queensland, part of that the Queensland Government's Drought and Climate Adaptation Program. It involves research, development and extension. And one of the great things about the program is that it heavily involves the Bureau of Meteorology and also Bureau of Meteorology staff in the UK Met Office to improve forecasts across Australia. We've got 10 extension officers appointed across Northern Australia. And essentially, if we go back to the reasoning for this, it was simply the northern beef industry across Northern Australia saying we need better forecasts and we really need to be able to dig down into those forecasts for our own local area. So how do we do that? We've appointed climate mates, so they're either local producers, advisors or consultants trained in climate. They've got a lot of local industry knowledge. They work 1 to 2 days a week. They can identify producer needs and influence that research and development. And I see in the last couple of days, the Bureau of Meteorology have changed the way that they present rainfall on their wet phone app. And that was one of the recommendations from climate mates across Northern Australia, that people are misinterpreting that information. So we are seeing changes happening as because of this feedback that we're getting at the moment. So these climate mates are pretty easy people to get on, and I'm happy to say that Vicky Mains, they're sitting in the room at the moment, so she's one of our climate mates. So I'd encourage you to talk to her today to find out where she can help you, and she'll also be able to tell you where some of these other climate mates are located across the state and how they can help you. So just in summary, if we look at that farm business plan, most of you advisors would all know the importance of people having that farm business plan. It's really a key to clients achieving their goals, and it helps give you confidence in their recommendations that you might give them, that it's following what ultimately they want to do. The other thing about if we are talking about weather, we want to keep it local. Producers want to know how weather will affect them at their location. So always try and come back to, well, how is this going to affect you here where you're sitting now? So I suggest that you talk to the DAF and Curator staff about the new drought assistance programs available, and connect with the climate mates like Vicky Main to find out where they can help you work with your clients for better decision making as far as weather's concerned. And that just about wraps it up. Thanks, Jo.
Good morning, everyone. Just a bit of a brief background on Jo and myself. Jo's grown up in Western Queensland. He grew up on a sheep and cattle property, while I grew up over in the Central Highlands on a cattle and grain property. Jo's got extensive knowledge working up in the Kimberley and the Northern Territory and the Gulf country, where my career has sort of taken me across into the Channel country, over to Canada, and then working up in the Gulf as well. We operate 100% commercial goat operation, and we also run a small seed stock Kalahari Red and Aussie Red Goat stud. Coolah, the home property, sits on the junction of the Barcoo and the Alice River between Blackall and Barcaldine. Since we purchased Coolah, we've been on an enterprise mixed roller coaster. Western Queensland has dealt us several challenges, from wild dog attacks, droughts, the live export debacle, just to name a few. Taking 100% responsibility for these challenges has been the key for us making really good decisions. The way we like to view the issues that have affected our business and turning it into our advantage has all been a large step forward. I relate it to a story of the farmer's donkey that fell down the well. One day, a farmer's donkey fell down the well. The animal cried out pitifully for hours as the farmer tried to figure out what to do. Finally, the farmer realised that the animal was old and the well needed filling in. So he decided to shovel dirt down the well to fill it in. The donkey cried out, realising what the farmer was doing. With each shovel of dirt, the donkey takes a step up. He finally realises that what was meant to bury him alive, he could use to his benefit and his advantage. I feel this has been the same for our business. All the challenges that Central Queensland has thrown to us, we've broken them down and used to our benefit, and has led to us where we are today. When we purchased Coolah, we were running a self-replacing sheep flock. 6 months later, from purchasing the property, wild dog attacks impacted our sheep numbers to the tune of 11% losses in the first 6 months. Realising this wasn't going to be sustainable, we transitioned into a beef cattle enterprise. We knew enough that the seasons in Western Queensland wasn't going to be kind to this enterprise, but we felt we had no other choice. The live export debacle and then droughts came along, and they impacted the bottom line of our fledgling business. Running 100% cattle also saw an increase in our woody reeds. Things became ugly and we felt we had lost control of our business.
What we did next, might have seen a little bit off centre in the middle of the millennial drought. We started getting off the property. When in the middle of a drought, there's any livestock producer knows, you put yourself last, you put your livestock first, and things tend to go pear-shaped pretty quickly. So when we start to place ourselves first, the land, the business, livestock, they come together a lot easier. So we took time off, we pursued our own interests, we got a few hobbies off the farm, but the biggest thing we did, we actually joined a group and started doing some professional development, and we joined 5 other businesses all over Australia. So we got to see their businesses in the flesh and also the books, and we had to be accountable for our decisions, and that it changes from just looking at our business as a lifestyle choice to a business. It's a business all the time. Now that's pretty easy to say, but until you do it, it's pretty awakening moment. So we still maintain professional development, which, right through, we still do it to keep coming exposed to new ideas, what's happening in the industry, also what's happening in the world. Great thing about COVID, there's been a lot of speakers and professional development courses that started up online, so you don't have to travel to attend. The number of podcasts you can listen to when you're in the car, which if you live out in the bush, you spend plenty of time doing. And this just helps you keep your mind fresh and what's going on in the world and in the industry. One of our favourite sayings is sell before you smell. The first time we had to make the hard decision when selling a whole sheep flock was hard. And not so many years later, we had to make the hard decision to sell our cattle herd, which we invested a lot of time and energy into breeding a line of cattle. Like everyone else, we're very proud of our livestock. As gut-wrenching as those decisions were, for the welfare of animals and our own mental well-being, the sell before smell was the most obvious, but also the hardest decision to make. So we've learnt not to fall in with our livestock. It's the easiest trap to do when you're in the livestock business. You know them, you breed them, you take A to B to make a product for C, for the market you target. So now we do a stock take of all our livestock regularly, as well as stock flows, and have a clear list of order of sales at all times throughout the year. The key point to dealing with drought in Australia, it's a part of the Australian landscape. Just accept it. Don't bother trying to fight it. You probably lose. Make the decision to sell before everyone else does. Well, there's still life in the market, rather than selling with everyone else and you're selling on a drought-depressed market, and you're just not getting the return you'll need to get back in.
We work around knowing our green date. This is a date when you should have 50 mil fall or better in one rain event by a critical date. Marking this in the calendar so we can see it easily has been a key. It is so easy to live on false hope that next week there's a weather change coming through that promises to deliver 80% chance of X number of mil rain. Western Queensland is so vast. The chance of our property receiving 80% is reduced when you calculate the area that the BOM is talking about. The likelihood of this rain event falling on our property is reduced. Like knowing our green date, monitoring our pastures, and knowing what feed we have left and where we are in our growing season has been a key. We have a clear procedure in place what we will do if we haven't received optimal grass growing rain. We have a plan A, B, and C, depending on the different scenarios that present themselves. When we've decided to feed in the past, we have a clear end date in mind. Getting out that red texter and circling that date on it in our calendars and our diaries so we can see that regularly. If we haven't received beneficial rain by that date, the trucks are booked for destocking to start on that date, not to start thinking about it.
The increase in land value versus stock value nowadays, and it's getting a wider gap every day, makes it very clear what your priority should be. If you own land, in most cases, it's your biggest asset. Having your land ready to respond to rainfall events places you ahead of the game if you're coming out of a dry spell. Your country will respond faster. You'll have the opportunity to buy back in while others are waiting for their country to respond. There will always be the punters, but they're the ones that are sort of living on a knife edge. And there's always stock for sale in Australia. If you're in a position where you have to destock, a lot of people say, oh, there'll be too dear or there won't be any left. That's never happened yet. I can't see it ever happening. There's always a drought somewhere in Australia. It's a big place. When we sold all of our sheep due to wild dog pressure, we sold 45 years of breeding by my family. Later, we sold all our cattle and we sold their own hard work and ideas. If your stock have your brand earmark on them, there's a fair chance they've been in your family for generations. However, unless they give you 200% reproduction every year and the meatworks personally comes out and pays you 50% above the market rate every year, you're no better than anyone else's. You need to break the emotional attachment and just look at them as a future sale all of the time. Our experience, we've felt that people that tell you to feed and hold them generally don't have any skin in the game, a bit more worried about their own future coming out of drought than yours. Takeaway point, be in control of your business all the time, not just the good times. It's easy to fall in the trap of rain is coming. We live in Western Queensland. There's too much variability in the weather patterns and predictions out here. The area is just too vast. Once we started matching our enterprise to our environment, we started seeing a change in ourselves and the landscape. We're very aware of the historical rainfall records for here in Coolah. We know that 2/3 of the time we're going to receive below average rainfall. So that's the majority of the time we're going to be working with drought or below average rainfall, and you have to account for that. When we stopped working against the landscape and accepted the droughts for what it could deliver, we just saw our profits per acre climb. Going into goats was a decision based on the control of our woody weeds. We costed what it would be to pull country as opposed to pelleting. We then costed erecting exclusion fencing and running goats. All of our decisions run through an Excel spreadsheet to calculate the return per acre. We couldn't get any other figures from other producers regarding running goats to where it's sort of the first. So we had to do our own research regarding goats and draw our own experience from harvesting wild ones. We saw the return, we backed ourselves and never looked back. We have found that goats managed are a lot kinder to the environment than other stock we've run.
No business just happens, it's created. And it's a partnership between two people or more. And I think if you have got a diversity within the thinking patterns of the two people, it is of benefit. Keeping good records, making quality time to spend in the office, having clear roles, creative planning, keeping and revising budgets. We have a very sound knowledge of our business, how our country works, and crunching numbers all the time helps make good decisions. We also have a diverse network of peers who are a sounding board for our ideas. And a key to what we do is we do what we love. Thank you.